In this video, we're going to take a few moments to talk about how we can better secure the user profile data we're sending from the server. Now, to illustrate what we're going to change, all we need to do is log in as one of our users. So over here, I have my login user request. I'm just going to fire this off a single time, and down below we have our response body. Now, we have our two root properties. We have user and token, and both of those are going to stay. There's nothing wrong with sending them back. The problem is what data we're sending back about the user. For example, we're sending back the password, which is not something we want to do. Passwords should be secured to the utmost extent, and exposing them is never going to be something we want to do, even if it's to a logged in user. There's no reason they would ever need this data as it's hashed, and it's not useful to them, so it's best to lock that down. Also, the tokens array. There's no need to expose all of the authentication tokens with the user profile, so it's going to be our job to figure out how we can hide both of these when we're sending data back to the client. To get this done, we'll be making a few changes to the application, and let's go ahead and start by scrolling up in the user router to the login request. Both login and sign up, they send back user and token. We can see that here on line 12 and down below on line 22. Let's focus on changing them to just send back the profile data we actually want to expose. We're going to look at two ways to get this done, so let's start with the solution that uses skills we already have. Right here, we're going to set the user property equal to something else instead of using that shorthand syntax. What we're going to do is set the user response equal to whatever comes back from the following function call, user.getPublicProfile. Now, getPublicProfile does not exist, but we could go ahead and create that function and set it up to just return the public data that we should be exposing about the user. So over inside of the user models file, we can go ahead and add a new method on. Now, down below, we have user schema.methods for methods on the instance and individual user, and we have user schema.statics for methods on the actual uppercase U user model. We want one on the individual instance. Right here, we can set that up. It would be user schema.methods. Right here, get public profile, exactly as we had set it up before. And we can set this up as a standard regular function. Once again, we're going to use the this keyword inside of here, so we don't want to use an arrow function. The first thing we can do inside of here is create a constant user and get its value from this like we've done down below, and this just makes our function a little easier to work with. And the next thing we're going to do is get back a raw object with our user data attached. So this is going to remove all of the stuff that Mongoose has on there to perform things like the save operation. We want back an object with just our user data. Right here, we'll create another variable. I'll call this something like user object, and we'll get its value by using the toObject method, which is provided by Mongoose. So that's user.toObject. This is going to give us just that raw profile data, and then we could go ahead and return it. So I'm going to return user object. Now this isn't going to do anything special. We've essentially recreated the same behavior we've had before, but with more code in place. In a second though, we'll be able to alter it to get what we want to get done. Right here, if we go back to Postman and we log in again, we can still see everything we were seeing earlier in the lesson, but now we can actually manipulate user object to change what we expose. So right here, what I'm going to do is use the delete operator to delete stuff off of that object, such as user object.password. And then down below, I will delete user object.tokens, removing both of those from the object that we send back as the response. Now, with this in place, we can head back over to Postman. We can fire off the exact same login request, and this time we no longer see that data. We're still getting back token and user still has the data we actually want to share with the individual user who's logged in, and it does not contain things like token and password, tokens plural and password, which the user does not need to access. So now that we have this in place, we have a pretty manual way to get the job done. And it's manual because we have to call our function getPublicProfile every single time we're sending the user back. There's a way to automate this that's not going to require us to make any changes to our route handlers. That's the second solution, and we're going to touch on that now, and it really requires just a small tweak to what we've already done. So here's what we're going to do, and I'll explain why it works with an example in isolation in just a minute. We're going to remove the method call that we just set up. Now, since we're removing it, we can go back to using the shorthand, which means that so far in this lecture, we haven't made any changes. This is exactly what we started with. We're going to save that file as we're not going to change it at all. Now, over inside of the user model, all we're going to do is rename this method. We're going to change the name from getPublicProfile over to capital JSON. And it's important that this matches up exactly, lowercase t-o, capital J-S-O-N. Now what I'm going to do is save the program, and we're going to head back over to Postman and test things out. Right here, I'm going to log in, and we can see that things are still working. We no longer have the password, and we no longer have that tokens array. All we've done is we've created this toJSON method on the user. We haven't changed the user router at all. Now, this means we have the exact same behavior any other time we are sending the user back, for example, when signing up or when getting their profile. So if I go over to read profile, without having made any changes to how data is sent back, you can see right here that the password and the tokens array are not there anymore, which is fantastic. Now, the question is, how exactly is this working? What's so special about toJSON that allows it to run even though we're never explicitly calling this? To figure this out, all we're going to do is head to index.js. In here, down near the bottom of the file, we're just going to add a little code to mess around with an example. Now, we already have an example from earlier in the class when we were messing around with JSON Web Tokens. We can remove that, so the last thing in the file is our call to app.listen. Now, we're going to figure out what exactly that toJSON method is doing. Let's start by creating a very simple object. I'm going to set up a new constant. I will have the variable name be pet. It's going to be an object, and we're just going to set up the name of our pet. My cat's name is Hal. So from here, what we're going to do is stringify this object. So we're going to convert it from an object over to JSON, and we'll log that JSON to the terminal down below. So console.log, we'll use the method we've used before to get this done. That is json.stringify. And what are we going to do? We're just going to pass in the object we're trying to stringify. Now, if I save the program and it reruns down below, as expected, we get our JSON string. We have our JSON with the name property where the value is Hal, and we can see that we have JSON and we have those double quotes wrapping all properties. So this is exactly what Express is doing. When we pass an object to response.send, it's calling json.stringify behind the scenes. So right here, when we pass our objects off to response.send, they're getting stringified, and the same is true any other time we get that done, such as when we send the profile back down below. Now let's go ahead and bring toJSON into the mix to see how that impacts the behavior. When we set up toJSON, it's going to get called whenever that object gets stringified. So right here, we're going to set up pet.toJSON, and we're going to set this up as a standard arrow function. Now right here, we have access to a this value, which is the object itself. So right here, console.log printing this. Then down below, we'll go ahead and return this to see what behavior we get. Right here, I'll be saving index.js. Down below, I have my object with the name property and the toJSON function we just defined. And then when it comes to the output right here, I can see that I just have name. The JSON is exactly like what I had before. The nice thing though, is now we can manipulate what exactly comes back when we stringify the object by returning an object from here. So what I could do, for example, is return this to keep things the same like we're doing now, or I could return an empty object to have none of the data get exposed. So right here, we can see that down below, the JSON is completely empty. There are no properties because toJSON sends an object back with no properties attached. This is exactly the sort of thing we're doing in our Express application. When we use response.send, JSON stringify gets called on the user. We've set up a toJSON method on the user where we manipulate the object, sending back just the properties we want to expose. And the end result is that we no longer see password or tokens anytime the user gets sent back to the client. Now that we have this in place, we're no longer in any danger of exposing user data that we didn't want to expose. We can go ahead and remove the little example we had down below, save index.js, and that's where we're going to stop for this one. We'll be continuing on with the other routes inside of the user file in the next video. Let's jump right into that.